Welcome back to Choosers of the Slain. This is Lucas.
And this is Nate.
And we are here to talk to you about some of the new releases that are getting teased on Warhammer Community, and then also about an upcoming event here in April that both of us are planning on taking part in. So it's kind of hijacked our hobby progress that we've been talking about for a few weeks.
Just a touch.
Just a little bit. But there's just so many cool things right on the horizon here. I figured we'd jump right into it.
Mm-hmm.
I know as a longtime Eldari player and somebody who has been kind of chomping at the bit to do a Drukhari force for a while, you've got to be pretty stoked right now.
Yeah, I'm very excited about all the previews we're seeing. The one from today, the 7 stolen rules from the CotS or whatever they called that article.
Mm-hmm.
I had mixed feelings on a few of them, but I'm gonna have to follow my own advice that I always give and wait until I see the full rules before I make any judgments on that. But overall, the stuff that they've been previewing is really exciting.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's all right. My biggest thing that stopped me from making a Drukhari army in 8th edition was that it felt like the tax to kind of be on the same playing field as everybody else, and be able to use the entire codex as opposed to just a small subsection of it, was really high, and parts of the book were just better than the others, and so you wound up with really constrained detachments, and you were like forcing patrols of witch cults in, or of homunculus covens in, or Cabalites in, just so you could get access to one data sheet. So you wanted Blackheart Cabal because you wanted Agents of Vect, and you wanted Ravagers, and you wanted Prophets of Flesh, Grotesques, and Talos because they were just so good, and you wanted like Cult of Red Grief witches that you could drop in from the webway in a squad of 20 and absolutely wreck things. But none of the sub factions really stood out as like you could take a whole force from this and it would feel good. But at the same time, you're forced to take all 3 to be able to get any of the benefits that the book really gave you, and it gave you a lot of benefits for taking all 3. And it's interesting to see today that the tax is still there, kind of, but it's not quite the same. So the Real Space Raiders detachment, I think, is a really interesting take on it, and one that I think will be pretty successful, in that you can put it all in one detachment, which means if you want to free up extra slots for more fast attack or for more heavies or something like that, like you can do that now, and you pay the command points and it's fine. But the other really promising thing about that is you can say, okay, I'm going to take all 3 of these, in my Real Space Raiders detachment, and then I'm going to ally in some Craft World LR. And that was something you couldn't do before if you wanted to keep a lot of your command benefits, or you were giving up access to part of the book to do so. So you still, I'm guessing you still can't do Ynnari because they say they can't be in an army with homunculus covens, but that's you could do a Drukhari and Harlequin force. Bring in a detachment of Harlequins, throw in a Solitaire and a couple characters and a few troops, and they can keep up with the Drukhari, but that consistent 4+ invuln and their speed, like, they could make a really good complement, especially to like witches. But I think the way they're doing it, especially the way they're doing patrols now, and you can take all 3, and I'm not sure if Alliance of Agony is going to be a thing where they all get Warlord traits. It'd be cool because it would give you an incentive to still take all 3 patrols. But the other big incentive there is that if you take 3 Drukhari patrols, all of their command costs become 0. So
nice.
whatever patrol detachment your Warlord is in gives you +2 command points. So you wind up, say you're playing a 2,000 point game, before you spend anything pre-battle, you start with 14 command points instead of 12.
It's
and
cool.
it feels like a very Drukhari Dark Eldar thing to do, where it's like you've got that cunning that, you know, we've got the upper hand because we've been planning this, and this is a surprise raid, and so we're better organized because we intentionally did things to misdirect and distract and you know, cause other conflict outside. So it's I think they're hitting a lot of the flavorful parts of the army and doing it in ways that the rules are relatively simple in terms of not being, you know, convoluted, crazy multi-paragraph rules, but effective. And that's good.
I think kind of something that you touched on this a bit already, but there's just a handful of actions in the game where there is like really characterful narrative, like force organization. And then, you know, those armies either have, you know, very specialist vehicles or specialist elite troops or like some kind of like crazy demonic big giant monster or something.
Right.
And those things are good enough that they have to be extremely expensive to be balanced and fair. But then it creates this like almost like a traffic jam of list creation, where to be balanced, the list has to cost a certain amount, and every data sheet has to cost a certain amount. But then to justify not justify, but to play them in the characterful way that their story sets up, you then run into having to pay those like absurdly high taxes. I know like custodians are kind of a similar thing, where the way the detachment systems work, I mean, you don't have multiple factions, but the way the detachment systems work, you have to fill those troop taxes. But, you know, the average custodian is like a Space Marine company commander.
Right.
And so you end up having to fill, you know, 3 or 6 or, you know, whatever. Before patrols were more viable, you had to fill all these like troop tax slots that chewed up like 80% of your points,
right,
you know,
right.
And then you had this whole codex full of really interesting characters that you couldn't afford. And I have seen Dark Eldar players wrestle with that in 8th edition, where they were like, you know, I want to use like all this stuff, but I either have to do it this cookie cutter way, where to meet all the requirements of all the detachments I have to run, I've got to pay enough taxes that I have like no flex points left to buy the interesting stuff I wanted to use to begin with. Or I have to focus on, I'm only playing witches and throw away 2/3 of my codex.
Right. Right.
And so I think that I agree with you. I think their solution to it looks promising. Something I really think is neat is, unless I'm misunderstanding it, that real Space Raiders detachment is not a detachment. It's almost like a formation, kind of, where you pick an existing detachment, and then as long as you meet these requirements, then that detachment becomes a real Space Raiders detachment.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if we're actually going to start to see like Dark Eldar or Drukhari brigades now.
So I was contemplating that earlier when I was reading it. I think there's a case to be made for a brigade.
Yeah, you get so many. I mean, if you're spreading into 3 factions, you're probably going to want at least one of every, you want an elite and a fast and a heavy out of each thing, because you want to run all 3 things.
Well, so that was part of the problem, though, is that like Cabals, for instance, in terms of Cabal specific units, they don't have any elites or fast attack. All they have is Ravagers.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So
they can cover each other's gaps that way.
Exactly. And
right.
that's the thing, is you can take Drukhari troops in small enough numbers and in small enough units that you can take 6 units of 5 for insanely cheap, unless the points go up to an unexpected level. But if they stay relatively the same, like you could take your HQs and your troops for under 500 points in that brigade.
Nice.
And then you're just filling slots.
Fill things in.
And
that's awesome.
And when you've got grotesques in the elite slot, you've got incubi in the elite slot, which with power from pain now are going to be, both of them are going to be able to charge on turn 2 after advancing. You've got all your witch cult stuff and fast attack plus scourges. You've got mandrakes in your elite spot, and then your heavies. When you have access to all 3, you've got ravagers, you've got Chronos, you've got Talos. I mean, you've got a lot more options there, and all of a sudden it turns into like it might be worth taking.
This is a viable way of doing it.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
And I think that's really cool. And I also like that, how many times, on this podcast or in person have I like just, drilled down on like 40Ks about making meaningful choices.
Mm-hmm.
I really, I know, and I'll touch on a specific point in a second, but I know that one of the changes to Power from Pain you were not super thrilled about, but I like how they brought that ability in line with like sacred rites and combat doctrines,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like this is the flavorful thing that Dark Eldar do, and this is also the thing you lose if you bring allies, because it forces you to like actually have to consider, do I want to run mono faction or not?
Right.
And I like, as I said, going into ninth edition, I liked the shift to allies should cost you things instead of give you things.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, tactical versatility
Right.
shouldn't profit you. It should
Yeah.
profit you
Yeah.
it should profit you in results because of your versatility. But in setting that up, you have to spend resources for it. I mean, that's just,
Right. Right.
basic like economics. And so I like that ninth made that shift, and I really like that GW is giving the like really cool, characterful, like effective rules are living in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw the Power from Pain chart now, I was like, okay, that feels as good as like sacred rites. I don't know that it feels as good as combat doctrines, but I think combat doctrines it's really, in my opinion, I've gone on this soapbox before, but I think combat doctrines really like live and die in the super doctrine. Like
Yeah.
combat doctrines themselves are decent.
Mm-hmm.
It's the chapter specific super doctrines where they start to kind of like spiral out of control.
Yeah.
But I thought, Power from Pain fit really nicely in that kind of like milieu.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know the one that we talked about before we started recording earlier today was this change from the 6-up feel no pain shrug roll to an invuln save.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that it's probably a little bit of a nerf on that, just because mathematically speaking, like you're gonna roll that feel no pain save on virtually everything, versus the invuln save's only ever going to come into question if you don't have cover, or they don't, or if they have AP, or or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like a shift that it appears that GW is making, and like it sure seems like in ninth edition that feel no pain is moving down to like it is a really powerful ability, and it seems to be moving down to like specific characters or specific like units that characterfully have it.
Yeah.
They seem to be moving away from army wide feel no pain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like I'm expecting that Sisters of the Valorous Heart are probably going to lose their 6-up feel no pain in favor of something else as well, because it just seems like that's the direction they're going. And I think that's a good thing, because I think that feel no pain is so it became so universal for a while, and it was like pretty much one of like the most powerful abilities that could be put in play, especially since it gives you protection against mortal wounds. And
right.
So I'm not surprised with that change, but I do like that they completely overhauled some of the later powers to make the later powers like better, to kind of offset like the fact that instead of what was it was like re-rolling advancing and charges just became being able to charge the turns that you advance.
So turn 2 was you re-roll charge rolls.
Okay, that's what it used to be.
Yeah, and now
it's you can charge if you advance.
Charge. Yep. So
which I mean that
the only thing that loses out there is if you bring stuff in through like the webway portal stratagem that you want to charge with. So like you can't bring in a squad of 10 incubi at 9 inches and have a reroll to the charge anymore. But
true. But for the one squad that you do that with, you can throw a command point at it, and in exchange for that, every witch cult unit you have across your entire army is advancing on turn 1 or on turn 2 and charging.
Right, right. So, and I mean, and on top of that, you wind up with stuff like you throw 10 incubi and a raider, and it advances the first turn, and so now your incubi are 20 some inches up the board, and as long as your raider survives, which is debatable, but even if it doesn't, incubi are pretty hardy. You know, the next turn they're going to be charging whatever you want them to charge.
Well, and I also love that now in the late game, what is it, like turn 4, your invuln save goes up to 5 up.
Yeah.
So in the late game, when you're just like trying to hold on to every objective you have tooth and nail,
Mm-hmm.
your invuln save improves. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to pay dividends.
Yeah. The one that really, I'm iffy on, is the 5th turn, where you automatically pass morale tests, and you count everything as having double the number of wounds remaining if it has brackets.
Okay.
The double number of wounds, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense late in the game, but the morale tests, by that late in the game, there's not a lot of morale tests happening.
Yeah, it's like your units have probably shrunk
Mm-hmm.
enough that if they take enough casualties to be able to fail their morale check in the first place, they're probably gone.
Right, exactly. And so I'm
is
kind of iffy on that. Like, is the expectation that you're going to take advantage more of the fact that that the troops can have up to 20 instead of 10? Because I mean that was witches and cabalites. In fact, I think witches can be squads of 30. I'm not positive. But I know cabalites can be in squads of 20. Racks were limited to 10, but apparently it was confirmed somewhere that now they're going to be max 20. So
I know that was listed in the January FAQ update, and everybody was like, whoa, but there's some folks that thought that was maybe a typo.
Yeah.
And that they weren't going to do that, but that's where that came from, was in the FAQ update. Their max unit size changed. I wonder if what the idea is, if GW is really looking at the game in that like competitive headspace, if they are thinking that you probably stuck a handful of squads of basic warriors or racks or whatever, witches have an invuln saving, but anyway, if you had your basic units like hiding out of line of sight or hiding in terrain pieces, and then in late game they are mad dashing for those end of game victory points, that you're going to be like sticking your neck out and hanging your butt out on turn 5,
right?
And you might be doing that with max size squads that hid from shooting all game,
right?
And because of the way morale can work in that last turn, if your opponent really like throws a Hail Mary for that one unit of 10 Cabalite warriors that you have left that's camping on your like the objective that's going to get you the 10 victory points that'll decide the game,
right?
If they do enough damage in the shooting phase and then morale rolls around and you lose 3 more dudes on morale, that might cost you that objective. And so maybe the idea is that as long as you, like on that last turn, they are so tenacious that if you stick your neck out there, unless they wipe you out with actual killing, you're guaranteed to stay alive. I mean, maybe that was their idea. I agree with you that I don't, with T3 models that are in an MSU world with T3 models, I agree with you that I'm not sure how many 20-man squads are left unless you're a Necron player, how many of those are left in turn 5.
Right.
But I do like that kind of nod to they come in clutch at the end because they're all hepped up on screams or
right, exactly. Well, I mean, if you think about it, even a squad of 5, Cabalite warriors, assuming they have the same leadership as they do currently, if you lose 3 on turn 5, you're forced to a morale test. I mean, your Cyberites leadership 8, so if you lose 3, you've got what, a 17% chance that you're taking combat attrition. Like, it's just that guarantee that you don't have to spend that 2 command points at the end of the game, that in case you hadn't done it already.
And as a Bloody Rose player, I take a lot of those bail out of a vehicle, everybody dies on a 1 tests, and I cannot tell you how often they seem to statistically veer wildly off of expectations, and you lose like 6 models to 1s in those moments. So, in the fact that if you do have a 5-man squad and they get beaten down below 3, then they're also, if that first one runs, the second one's running on a 1 or a 2 because they're under half strength. And so, okay. I think we talked through that. I think, okay, that might not be so bad on turn 5, but I think it was good that they paired it with that the bracket ability.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also, I gave it some more thought after we talked earlier today, and I'm not so upset about the change to the first round ability being a 6+ invuln instead of a 6+ feel no pain. I mean, for one thing, we know for sure that Cabalate Warriors are up to a 4+ save, so that in itself is a pretty solid boost in survivability. And if you think about it, the meta right now, because of the strength and prevalence of Marines, you see a lot of damage 2 or damage D3 weapons, and an invuln is better against that than a feel no pain.
Yeah,
because
that's
if you're a 1 wound model, if you take 2 damage, you have to pass 2 feel no pains if you fail your armor save, but you only have to pass 1 invuln save. So I think if anything, especially due to the way the game is designed now and the way it seems to be trending, the invuln might be a better survivability trick. The other thing to it too is there were a lot of things that already had like a 6+ or a 5+ invuln. Pretty much everything in Homunculus Covens was at a 5+, unless you're Prophets of Flesh, and then you were at a 4+. Most witch stuff had an invuln, at least against ranged attacks. In fact, I think witches had it against melee too. It's been a while since I looked at it now, but
I think it was melee.
But regardless, it would seem odd to me for them to make this a turn 1 ability across the entire army, and just have units that don't benefit from it in any way that have the ability. And so I'm really wondering if either we see stuff like the insensible to pain invuln saves for Homunculus Coven units, or the expert acrobats, or whatever the witch rule is called, that gives them the invuln save. I'm wondering if we'll see those change either to be things like add 1 to this model's invuln save, or add 2 to this model's invuln save, or whatever. I mean,
or even for the Homunculus Covens to shift the other way and to pick up
feel no pain. Right. And I could see that too, because that makes sense for the Homunculus Coven stuff. Yep. I mean, their rule is literally called insensible to pain. So,
and I think they have a relic called the something doll, like the nightmare doll or
nightmare
something.
Doll.
It gives the character a 4+ feel no pain or something like that, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So that may be the direction it goes. We'll have to see. I know we do want to get moving on to talk about this event that's hijacked us, but I do want to say before we're finished on Drukhari, how about those combat drugs for the witches being able to be like universally applied, like being able to give the same drug to every squad?
So I like it, but unless the list has a couple of major duds, odds are pretty good I'm just rolling 2 for every squad.
Because that's something that I have often said is, like for Canticles of the Omnissiah or for Sacred Rites or things like that, when everything on the list is good, I get that in a tournament situation you want to like control all the variables and randomness is bad, but like if every option is solid and helpful, why wouldn't you want 2 of them? Like
right.
And so it sounds like it'll be a bookkeeping nightmare, because you'll have to, like, if you run enough witches, you're gonna have to keep like an index card or
get
something.
Tokens. Make tokens.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would work. That would be something that you could do, is just kind of make little icon tokens or something and set next to the units.
I mean, I played War Machine for quite a while, and you had 18 tokens on every unit. So just having 2 on witches, I'm like, it's fine. Just use tokens.
That's fair. It's not as simple as pull out the +1 toughness card and just set it down next to the squad, though. But the idea of, if you're building around a certain strategy, being able to just say all of my combat drugs are the +1 strength because I have this plan, or whatever the particular thing is so nice, instead of that like having to go through the list until you've used every drug before you can double back up.
Right. Right.
So I'm really happy about that change. Things that let you play the way you want to play,
Yeah.
I think is awesome.
Yeah,
So
and I have to say, as someone whose favorite Cabal is Cabal of the Poison Tongue, and who is disappointed that Lady Malice is not a playable character anymore, seeing the preview for their rules made me very happy because
it's always nice when the faction that you like ends up with like competitive rules.
because 3+ on everything that's not a vehicle or Titanic is
Yeah.
that's solid. Like looking at you, Mortarian.
Yeah. Well, in just the idea that like in like normative situations
Mm-hmm.
across the board, those rifles are now functionally strength 5
Yep.
because almost every infantry that they're going to shoot at is going to be toughness 4,
Right.
because
Right.
50% of the armies out there are Space Marines.
It just makes them better.
Yeah.
At
Just
everything.
hands down.
I mean, it's just if the other rules for the Poison Tongue are the warlord traits or whatever are decent, and there's not some some standout, this is by far the best choice. Like Agents of Vect, which I'm guessing will go away.
Yeah,
I'd be very surprised if that's still a thing. But it's just it's nice to see that that they have they went from being one of 2 Cabals that there wasn't really a great reason to take to one that seems viable. So unless all the other ones are even better, I'll be taking Poison Tongue,
awesome.
and not feeling bad about that choice like I used to.
Be like, I really like these, but they suck.
Yeah.
Cool. No, that's awesome. So, we just talked a good deal about Drukhari, and I know that the next topic here is going to involve them a little bit because of your plans. But we just wanted to mention that both Nate and I are going to try our hand at the Motor City Mayhem tournament put on by some local champions here in Michigan. We've got the tournament coming up at the end of April, and looking at what we wanted to run, unfortunately, the armies that we had been working on this year were not what we landed on. Nope. So we both had to kind of shift gears and change things up. I'm digging the sisters back out, so I got to get an army all together and ready for that. And Nate is going to be bringing the new Drukhari.
I am.
And so we've had to put the Immortal Lions and some Necrons aside to kind of cleanse the palette with throwing together 2,000-point armies for this upcoming
cleanse
event.
The palette with speed painting.
Yes, cleanse the palette with pressure and deadlines.
Yes.
Yes. So, what are you looking forward to the most about this event that we decided to throw our hat in the ring?
It has been a long time since I've played in any sort of significant tournament. So I'm excited to kind of get to flex the competitive muscles. You and I have talked before how typically when I'm playing in our environment, like I take stuff for fun and I don't really worry about making hard lists or anything like that. And so it'll be nice to kind of be able to stretch those muscles a little bit and really dig in with some teeth on a list.
I kind of similar feelings. Like I tended to play a decent amount of competitive 40K back in the day, 3rd edition, 4th edition time. I was in a lot of Rogue Trader tournaments and traveled down to Chicago for one of the grand tournaments back when Games Workshop was actually like running like six grand tournaments a year in the United States and that kind of stuff. So kind of getting back into that actual play style is really intriguing to me. But also, sisters are doing pretty well out there and being, having started the kind of competitive focused sisters Facebook group, because there were a couple awesome Facebook groups for like community and hobbying, because the sisters players have been around for kind of on the fringes for so long that their communities had really settled into like, I love this army, I'm going to paint this army, I'm not expecting anything from it in the game because GW forgot about us, So there were 2 really big like hobby focused communities, but not a lot of like really competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and you and I have talked at length in the past about my love of not only the faction but also like just the absolute justice that GW did them with their 8th edition codex.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had kind of started that competitive Facebook group to try to give a place for those, you know, players to come together.
Yeah.
And it takes off like every day. I'm approving people for it and stuff. So this event comes
Nice.
along and I'm like, you know, working on these Marines. I kind of want to get my Custodes out. I'm occasionally looking sideways at the orcs because I can hear them. I can hear the wah calling
Yep.
in the distance, you know. But I don't know that I could look myself in the hobby mirror if I went to a tournament and didn't like, you know, represent the Order of the Iron Rose. So
Yeah.
it was like a no-brainer. Had to do it. And I also have written extensively about how somebody would appropriately use the Triumph of St. Catherine, because
Mm-hmm.
that model when the Codex came out was such a confusing mess. And I pushed pretty hard for kind of campaigned like this is how this model is supposed to be used.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel like if I run a sisters list that doesn't have the Triumph in it, I'm like betraying my own crusade. So
Yep.
so I'm definitely feeling a calling from the Emperor that I've got to represent the Triumph of St. Catherine and the Adeptus Sororitas in the tournament.
Nice.
So sorry, Immortal Lions, you're on the bench because I got to paint 93 million models because yay guard numbers.
Yeah. 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 I'm not
excited,
sure
though.
which of us is going to have to paint more.
I think right now. Oh geez, I'd have to actually run the math to know if how accurate this is, but I want to say I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of just shy of 100. No,
Okay.
80ish maybe.
Okay.
Models in the army.
You've got more than me then. My vehicles in particular take up a decent amount of points, so
Gotcha.
That's
okay.
where a lot of that goes. But that's assuming that the rules for cabals aren't good enough that I just don't go, you know what, I'm going to take 50 Cabalite warriors. I really doubt that, but hey.
I mean, you could end up with Necron warrior goodness where you're just like, you know what, I only need 6 blobs of 20 of these and I'm golden.
Listen, all I'm saying is that if you have 50 Cabalite warriors, 10 in each raider, 5 gunboats going around with poison tongue shooting out of the raider, you're putting out 100 shots that always wound on 3s every shooting phase.
Fair enough.
And that's not including your blasters and your dark lances. And if you make one of those squads a Trueborn squad, then they're always hitting on 2+ regardless of any modifiers. Like, it's not impossible to be a case, but I think I'll probably do a real space raid with all 3.
No, I think that might be the way to go. I mean, obviously, until that codex drops in your hands, it'd be hard to say. But
it's the big risk of taking that one.
Yeah, I think though the conversely, there's also going to be the strength that like not everybody's used to it, and not everybody's figured everything out yet.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, only the players that are really, really consuming all of the internet content that are out there are going to have a full understanding of the codex if they don't own it.
Right.
Yeah, I think a real Space Raiders detachment is going to be the way to go. You can kind of cover all your bases, and that's really because you need to be able to kill, you need to be able to move, you got to have that board control, but you also got to be survivable. I think that's just probably going to be the way to go.
Yeah.
I did kind of just quick do a little bit of math in my head, assisted by my phone here, and I want to say I'm at 76 models.
Okay. All right.
So.
Yeah, but, it's definitely more than I will probably have, assuming things play out the way I'm expecting them to. I'll probably be right around 50 to 60. So still not a small amount, but
a little bit of a task ahead of us here.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh.
just a touch.
Yeah, but so yeah, you'll probably in upcoming episodes hear us hobby. You know, our hobby talks are going to be a little bit focused on those 2 factions as we get ready for the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
We're also hoping to once we have our lists finalized, because there's a list submission deadline in early April. once we get our list finalized and submitted, we're talking about actually breaking down our lists and why we made the choices that we made, kind of as an episode topic for folks that want to kind of see a little bit more in-depth version of what we discussed on the last episode about, how to look at a data sheet and how to make decisions. We'll kind of back the camera up a little bit, and you'll get a window into how we make our own armies and why we make the decisions that we make. So I think, if you guys can look forward to that, we'll have that as soon as our lists are set in stone.
Yep.
Both of us, because there's some upcoming Sisters releases, and obviously some Drukhari releases that could change what we have planned up to the last minute.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Palatines and strange repressor looking silhouettes. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows what the next few weeks
right. Right.
Hold for the factions that we're looking to take. But once it gets locked down, we'll be sharing all of that with you. And we'll have some pictures of work in progress stuff up on Discord, and also here on the podcast / YouTube media. I was gonna say blog, podcast. Words have meanings.
The thing
that
we
you're
do
doing
we
right
talk.
now.
Yeah. Just
the different version of it that happens later.
Yes.
But I do want to encourage anybody who's listening, join us on Discord.
Yeah.
We've had a bit of a population explosion for our little corner of the internet.
Exponential.
And folks have been pretty active, scheduling games in the local community and list discussions. We also have a little bit of a rising star in the 40K kind of global community in our local meta, who's kind of a friend of both of us, and maybe we can get this gentleman on for an episode or two, and he can become a friend of the show as well.
Yeah.
He posts a lot in our Discord, and we're happy to share. If you want to check out, it is Adaptive Subroutines, a Necron and 40K news outlet.
Yeah.
Edward is an awesome player, very, very strong, very active on the Discord, and we're hoping that we can get him to join us for some conversations about some stuff, especially going into this tournament. He'll be joining us at the tournament as well.
Yep.
So we got a lot of stuff coming right around the corner, a lot of stuff to look forward to. Lots of reasons to jump into the Choosers of the Slain community, and just join us for discussions all week long, and who knows, maybe we'll spend an episode talking about something that you brought up on Discord.
Yeah.
But thanks again for joining us and listening to us just swooning over the upcoming Dark Eldar releases.
Yes.
Because I think we're both pretty excited about
pumped.
that.
So pumped.
So thanks again for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed listening. We definitely enjoyed having you here, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Stay safe, everyone.